The importance of voting where you can is certainly never understated, and it only makes sense that on a day like Election Day in the United States, this week's Tech Tuesday is Tivit, Seller of Secrets. This commander not only allows you extra voting influence, but it also rewards you for doing different things depending on what players vote, while having ward and flying in its own right. Let's jump into today's video and take a look at Tivit, Seller of Secrets. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Be sure to make your voices heard if you enjoy this video by clicking that like button and subscribing. Click the bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos are posted. I do apologize, I did not get to post the new deck profile last Tuesday. It was a very busy week with all the foundations and jumpstart reveals, so I kind of decided to prioritize that, but we are back with it today, and I thought it would be fun considering the fact that, you know, it is Election Day in the United States, and it's obviously going to be a big topic for a lot of people that live in the country, to make a deck that has a little fun with that concept and focuses on voting. Now, Tivit, Seller of Secrets is actually a commander from New Capenna, so pretty going back a little bit now. And it's always a card I thought was really interesting. I've wanted to maybe experiment with, but it's a high cost card, which has always been one of the biggest drawbacks for me. Like, when I expend the mana and resources to bring this out and then it dies, I'm immediately set so far back in terms of being able to cast it again. But I think we found some ways to make that work here within this deck, so we're going to take a look at it. Let's read Tivit's effect together. It says, whenever Tivit enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, starting with you, each player votes for evidence or bribery. For each evidence vote, investigate. For each bribery vote, create a treasure token. While voting, you may vote an additional time. Those votes can be for different choices or the same choice, and it has flying in Ward 3. So a lot going on here. You're consistently able to make tokens, whether it's going to be, you know, treasures or clues is entirely dependent, but you're going to be getting at least, you know, 3 tokens when it comes out. Well, 4 actually, plus your own. Can't even think straight here. So yeah, it's a pretty cool card, and it does allow you to play around with the vote mechanic, which is kind of underutilized in Magic, but there are some powerful cards that do tap into it. So yeah, Tivit is what we're building around here. He is white, blue, black, so it does give us access to a lot of powerful, what I would say, more EDH staples, as well as just being a good interaction. And for flavor purposes, I did include a couple cards in here that perhaps are not the most optimal, but do work with the vote mechanic. As always, the deck list will be posted in the link in the description, so you can kind of look at it for yourself. This is always sort of meant to be sort of a reference point or a launching off point. I don't expect that my deck is going to be the optimal version for everyone. Hell, because it's probably not even the most optimal version for me. It's just sort of loosely building it, playing a few games, testing it out, and that's it. So that's the process that goes into it. So let's jump into the cards. Disciple of the Vault, pretty cool. This works really well here. Whenever an artifact is put into a grave, you can have a target opponent lose a life. For a 1-drop, and considering how many artifacts you're going to be creating, you know, with Tivit's effects and other cards in the deck, this is just an easy way to ping the opponents for some extra damage. It's not going to be crazy, but it's just going to be solid to have out, especially as an early 1-drop. Esper Sentinel, just really good here. It's an artifact, so it synergizes well with a lot of the deck in general. And then you also get some extra draw power. Not bad, kind of goes without saying. Sort of similar here with Baleful Strix, flying, Death Touch, enters battlefield, draw a card. One of the things about this deck is it is going to take us a little time to get set up, even if we do try to ramp. So having cards like Baleful Strix that can just be a nice early game board, you know, threat, I suppose, because the Death Touch and then you get your draw power, is definitely not bad. So that's kind of the reason for his inclusion. Contraband Kingpin is just another lower cost lifelink. When an artifact enters, you scry 1. So get a lot of scrying, a lot of draw fixing as you're creating these tokens. Just pretty solid overall. Grudge Keeper I like this card a lot because it's just kind of fun. Whenever players finish voting, each opponent who voted for a choice you didn't vote for loses 2 life. So you're playing a card and you're going to vote for one thing and you're going to use your extra vote, and maybe your opponents want to vote against you. Those opponents who don't vote with you are going to lose some extra life. It's more thematically cute and kind of fits with the voting than it is like a powerful card, but I guess over time it could definitely do some damage, which is certainly not bad, especially if you're able to consistently trigger or blink your commander. Which we'll get to shortly. Marionette Apprentice, really good. Just whenever a creature or artifact is put into a grave, each opponent loses 1 life. You're sacking clue tokens, treasure tokens, whatever you're making with Tivit, so this is not going to be hard to get going. Just essentially like a Blood Artist, but for tokens. Tax Collector, this one's just, again, kind of funny, but it is decent enough. It can stop your opponent's creatures from activating abilities, attacking, or blocking, and lower the cost of spells. It's just a decent card. This is one that's more included in here for the voting aspect of it, just to have a little fun with the theme. Obviously, you can make those changes if you want to. Academy Manufacturer is fantastic because every time you're creating a clue or treasure, you're getting instead one of each and a food. So I don't really need to explain too much about why this card is kind of cracked in this deck, but you're making a lot of tokens very quickly. So this is probably a must play. Ballot Broker is just, you can vote an additional time, so you're going to have 3 votes instead, which is going to allow you to swing some things more in your favor in a pod if you can get even one opponent on your side. Brago's Representative is the same thing. You get an additional vote. So at that point, if you somehow have both of those out along with Tivit, you're basically going to guarantee to resolve your voting cards however you want them to resolve, or get some extra resources. So those are all pretty cool. Forensic Gadgeteer, whenever you cast an artifact spell, Investigate. So you cast an artifact, you get a clue, but activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less to activate. So basically you can pay 1 to sack your clues instead of 2, which is going to be really helpful as your game is going along. Campbell Profiteering Mayor, just pretty cool. Whenever you make tokens, opponents lose life. Unfortunately, it is 1 or more. So you can't just like burn for a bunch of damage, but obviously it'd be kind of broken. And then when 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your opponent's control, for each of them you create a tap token that's a copy of that token once per turn. Not bad. Obviously, if your opponents are making treasures, clues, etc. as well, you can get in on that action. Nadier's Nightblade, pretty standard stuff. Ranger Captain of Eos, just a good card that allows you to search for creatures with mana cost 1 or less. There aren't too many in here, honestly, but it also does have the ability to sack it to shut your opponents out of casting non-creature spells, which is a nice added bonus. Ideally, we're opening this early and searching for Esper Sentinel. You probably want to you could throw in a few other 1 costs as well, but just generally speaking, a decent card. I do like its second effect a lot, though, as a way to sort of protect yourself from mass board wipes. Obviously, it is pretty pricey, though, so I understand the thought if you want to switch for something else. Certainly does make sense, if you're trying to be more budget-friendly. Spellseeker gives you access to instants or sorceries. Pretty standard stuff. Teysa, whenever a clue is put into the grave, you get a 1/1 white-black spirit creature token with flying. It is only a once per turn, but she does also generate more clue tokens for you on each turn and has Death Touch, so just overall a decent card. Arcbound Condor is whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, target creature and opponent controls gets -1/-1. So if you're making a bunch, you can definitely kill some stuff and get around, indestructible at the same time. So nice all around. Displacer Kitten, this card's freaking annoying, but it's really good. If you blink your commander or any of your other stuff that triggers on ETBs, you're able to really get some strong resources there. Master of Ceremonies, this is just a voting one kind of, but opponents choose money, friends, or secrets. For each player who chooses money, you get treasure tokens. So it just kind of falls into the line of different things with voting. Merchant of Truth is more interesting. It's whenever a non-token creature dies, you create a clue token, but your clues also have Exalted. So if your clues can start attacking, you can actually get some buffs from them. Spark Double is really good because it can enter as a copy of something. So you can either make a copy of one of your pressure creatures or something that gives you extra voting, or you can make a copy of Tivit and you have 2 out and it's not legendary. So pretty cool in that regard. Custody Squire, just another voting one. Marnius Calgar's one I actually saw someone had put in a bunch of different versions of this deck, and it's really interesting, although a little costly. But whenever a token enters under your control, you draw a card. Obviously, that's 1 or more tokens, so you're not going to get to draw 1 for each, but it does kind of make sense regardless. Double Strike, and you're getting some additional creature tokens with his other effect. Just a solid card overall out of 40k. Junkwinder, this is going to be pretty much free. It's going to cost like 2 mana to play once you resolve Tivit's effect once or twice. Just a really good card, and it's cheap, so it fills a nice slot. Tangled Trove Kelp is a bit gimmicky, but I do like it. It's got Ward 2, and then it makes all your other clues become 6/6 plants in addition to their other types, which of course does work with Merchant of Truth as well, where, if you say attack with just 1 clue, it gets +1/+1, and then all your other exalted permanents buff it too, so just kind of some cute interactions there. It's definitely not set in stone. You could absolutely make changes on that. Going into the sorceries, pretty straightforward. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. Reanimate, Farewell, Toxic Deluge, Wrath of God. You want to be able to wipe boards and stuff and keep pace. Rise and Shine is cool. You can turn an artifact into a creature, so you can make a clue into a creature, and then it gets 4+1/+1 counters. But you can also cast it with Overload to do that with all of your artifacts, so if you're making a bunch of clues, you can put a ton of them out and have a lot of power. Tyrant's Choice, pretty cool voting card, low enough to the ground, too, that I think it works. If Death wins votes, each opponent sacks a creature. If the votes are tied or Torture wins, each opponent loses 4 life. In most cases, you're going to be able to get more votes out, so you're going to be able to choose which effect is going to be more beneficial to you. Council's Judgment, another one. Each player votes a non-land permanent you don't control. Exile each permanent with the most votes or tied for the most votes, and because you also get a second vote, you can definitely politic that pretty well. Plea for power is time or knowledge. If time gets more votes, you get an extra turn. If knowledge gets more votes or it's tied, you draw 3 cards. Not really much of a downside either way, but obviously swinging the vote in your favor means you could potentially get an extra turn. Pretty strong. Obviously, you'd have to make sure you have some pretty good sets set up there, but still. Expropriate also is another one, time or money. For each time vote, you get an extra turn. For each money vote, you choose a permanent owned by the voter and gain control of it. And again, you can manufacture these extra votes so you can take multiple additional turns. Despite being a costly card from a mana standpoint, this could probably win you the game if you're able to resolve it. Onto the instance. Cloud Shift is just an ephemerate, both good for blinking stuff. We have a lot of effects that activate on entry. Dark Ritual because ramp is important. Dispatch, basically just a free exile since you're going to have so many artifacts, but it can also be used in a pinch to tap something. Enlightened Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, just good searchers. I know they're not budget friendly, so I'm mindful of that. You can obviously switch them for what you want. Illusion of Choice, you choose how each player votes this turn. Crazy good card. And only 1 mana. Obviously, if you could play 10 of this, you probably would. Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshare is pretty good. Born Upon a Wind allows you to cast spells as though they had flash and draw a card. You play a lot of sorceries and stuff, as well as some artifacts that can be good to drop on a whim. So having access to something like this is actually pretty good. Counterspell, because I still think it's important to have a couple of counter options. We have that in Split Decision, which is one that allows you to vote to either counter a spell or copy a spell. So, if you're working with people to slow down a threat in your pod and someone's playing a powerful card and you're like, here, vote in my way and we'll counter it. Or, if they don't, then they're going to let you copy it, which means you're going to be able to get some advantage out of it too. So either way, this is a pretty good card, and it does again fit well within the voting theme. Psych Rift is great. I play it in anything blue because it's kind of a broken card. Faithful Mending, decent card. You gain 2 life, draw 2, then discard 2, and it has flashback, so not bad. You don't have a ton of draw power early, without having to sack the clues, so that's kind of nice. And Teferi's Protection is just, broken. Artifacts, just mostly ramp. We've got the Talismans, we've got Arcane Signet. Model of Unity is a unique one. Whenever players finish voting, you and each opponent who voted for a choice you voted for may scry too, so you can maybe get some people to vote on your side a little bit, plus it's a mana rock. Coercive Portal, similarly, you vote, and it happens at the beginning of each upkeep, and if Carnage gets more votes, you sack this and destroy all non-land permanents. If Homage gets more votes, you draw a card, so you can kind of be like, keep this out as a looming threat. If people vote for Carnage, they can blow up the board, but obviously if maybe you don't want your stuff to be destroyed at that point for whatever reason, you can maybe skew some of the votes in your favor. There's a lot of fun to be had with politicking with this, which is always nice. Time Sieve is cracked in this deck because you can make the artifacts so quickly and easily, but you tap it, sack 5 artifacts, take an extra turn. Just a nuts card, really. And it doesn't even sack itself, so you could technically use it, on your next turn if you can continue to consistently make the artifacts, which is just crazy to think about. One Ring, super good. Tamio's Journal, also really good, but because you can sack the clues and then search for any card, when we're making clues this way, you can basically guarantee you get a bunch of clues just when you bring Tivit out, which means this card's going to be live pretty consistently, and it also generates its own clue token, so it has that bit of benefit going for it. And then we got the boots just for protection. Enchantments, nothing crazy here. Mystic Remora, Animate Dead, Black Market Connection, Smothering Tithe, all pretty good cards. I don't think there were too many vote-related enchantments that were actually good or even worth playing, and I'm already playing a few gimmicky cards, so I didn't want to go crazy. And then for the land base, you can kind of see what's going on here, and I'll just sort of move this over a little bit for the purpose of the end of this video here. Just generally speaking, the best lands we have access to, the dual lands, land fixing, as many fetches as we can, and a few basics just because you do occasionally run into cards like Blood Moon that can completely screw you over. So that whole deck list will be posted there so you guys can kind of see what's going on. But I think this deck is really fun. I love the concept of it. Just overall a really, really cool card. And I thought it was thematically appropriate given the day here in the United States. Let me know what you guys think of this. If anyone has experience with Tivit, have you built it a little differently? Are there some cards I'm not playing that I should include, and vice versa? And like I said, the link will be in the description, so be sure to check it out, as well as all the other decks from our weekly Tuesday deck profiles. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.